tēnā hoki koe te ahorangi e Roz, whākine te rā kōrero mai roto anō I tō whānau, ngā mahi ai tō pāpa I roto I tēnei whare, I roto na hoki tō tātou whare wānanga. Tēnā hoki koe I kōrero rā ki te iwi nei ki te ao, me pēhe tātou mahi tahi me ngā iwi take a rā ko te Māori o Aotearoa nei. Thank you, Roz. Every year for that reminder of that special association that your whānau has with this building and with the universities. My whānau too has an association with this place. It goes back perhaps a century before that which that Roz just described. It was here that some of the very first kind of formal discussions began between the Crown and tribal leaders both of this area and other parts of the country. It was here that some of the earlier governors in the early 1800s started to talk about the relationship that the Crown and the newly formed government of New Zealand would have with Indigenous people here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and that all went well up until around the 1860s when those negotiations turned sour and many tribes entered into full-blown warfare with the Crown. At one point, one of my ancestors would be invited here regularly. He was a tribal leader to stay and speak with the governor, and then when they no longer could agree with one another, he was banned from ever coming back here. And had he come back here, he'd probably been shot or imprisoned. So this building represents both the exciting and the less exciting aspects of our history, and of course people like Roz and many of us in modern times have associations with this old building. That's the building. This is us here and now, and as Roz described very beautifully in her formal address to you and welcome, New Zealand is one of the countries that fascinatingly is leading the way in terms of government and Indigenous peoples as we grow common understandings around the appropriate use of natural energy and natural resources. Roz mentioned the legal personhood that some of our rivers and mountains are achieving through modern legislation. We actually learned that trick from you guys. Some of the first examples we saw of physical spaces, sacred spaces, temples, rivers, geographical features being given the rightful spiritual and cultural and political and legal protection that they rightly deserve. It came out of some of the countries that you represent here today. So in that spirit, we welcome you. Many of our ancestors who were in the New Zealand Defence Forces and some decades gone by occupied, not occupied literally politically, but lived in some of the parts of the world that you come from through shared military associations. So acknowledging all of that history that we share with you, and the association going right back into time before Polynesia and the Polynesian peoples came about. We acknowledge that history, so welcome. One thing I feel sad about as a Māori person is that in the Pacific, in countries such as the Cook Islands and Fiji, Samoa and Tonga, clapping your hands is very much part of their traditions, their cultural traditions, the sharing, for example, of the kava from the cup, and some of their musical traditions. For some reason, Māori forgot how to do that by the time our ancestors arrived down here to Aotearoa some 100 years ago. So maybe by your encouragement we'll pick up what we call te paki or the clapping. But thank you for your rich words, your very sincere words. Thank you for the way you acknowledged our government. As much as we expect you'll learn from us, so too will we learn from you. And thank you for your songs. Thank you for your very active musical displays. Some fantastic dancing. We hope to see some of that at the graduation ceremony also. So now, having shared our culture with one another this afternoon, having completed almost our formalities, there is one last formality we'd like to observe, and that is the hongi. It is the pressing of noses. And the Philippines might enjoy this little story, but many people in New Zealand, many Maori people in New Zealand are Catholics. And because we don't have very many Maori Catholic priests, we look to the Filipino priests for their support in our parishes. So in my village, where I come from, up in the far north in the Hokianga, for the last 15 years, we've had roughly 6 Filipino priests serving us in our parish. And one of the reasons why the Filipino priests are so popular in the Maori parishes is because they can pick up Maori language just like that. The one thing they struggle a little bit with at the start is the hongi, the pressing of noses. I think they find it all a little bit too scary, but by the end of it, they're very expert at it. And so too are they expert at the Maori language. So, have you been told about the hongi, the pressing of noses yet in your courses? Or I'll demonstrate with Dean, a colleague of mine. This is shaking of the hand, pressing of the nose, and you say kia ora, as Dean said, kia ora, may you be well, may you have life. So the staff of the course and those linked to the course are going to line up along here. And I invite my colleagues to come and line up along here.
And those who don't want to do hongi traditional?
Yep. And so those if in your religious tradition you may not shake hands with, for example, another male, or you cannot press noses, please simply walk past the line, and as you see each person, just sort of nod and say kia ora. So I'll ask my 2 colleagues over here to line up with us as well. And then we're going to get you to start over here with our colleague over here. Shake hands, press nose. For those who don't want to shake hands and press nose, just say kia ora, and then come out through that door, come back in here, and then we're going to go down and have something to eat because you'll be hungry.